I actually had very much like bought into the romanticized idea of like a starving artist, and that
Hmm.
my struggle was where this my good work was going to come from.
Hmm.
So it became 10 years of this battle of me trying to be a director and not being able to, So it was like just like Brian said, many times I felt confused.
The reason it's an impossible goal is from the mindset I'm in right now.
Mm.
And as we grow, our mindset changes, and that thing that seems impossible becomes possible. But the only way to grow is by overcoming challenges.
Because, I don't think if I was going through that situation, I would give it a try to Buddhism, because I think it was because of how dire was my situation that I really embraced it. So, but all I can say is that, man, this practice really changed my life.
From SGI USA, I'm Cassidy Bradford, and this is Buddhability, the weekly series where I talk with Buddhists from all walks of life about the power we each have to change our lives and the world around us. Hi, Cassidy from Buddhability here. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe. It'll help the show out, and you'll never miss an episode. If you want more Buddhability content, you can subscribe to our email newsletter in the link below. We put out great content every week. Enjoy the show.
All right. Welcome to Buddhability, Leo and Brian. It's great to have you here. I know you're both busy. Brian, you're traveling. Leo, you just finished work. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation. So today's episode is going to be about art and Buddhism, and also like living as an artist and a Buddhist. So to kick things off, I'll just have you guys both introduce yourselves. You can share a little bit about who you are, and also your journey to like how you started pursuing art. So I think, Brian, I'll give it to you to start things off.
So my background is actually, I studied cognitive science and human-computer interaction. I was a pre-med student, took all those classes, did the MCAT, and after college, I worked doing UX UI, usability, for a pretty brief time, like a year and a half. I learned the things that I thought were interesting pretty quickly. And at that period of time in my life, the paths of growth in that world were not what I was interested in,
Yeah.
And so I was pretty clearly not thriving. And a few things happened at that time. I recognized that in myself, and I was like, I need to make a change. And I also read a book called Cradle to Cradle, which is all about like redesigning the way that we make things. So instead of a cradle to grave model, it's, in that book, they coined the term, the circular economy. And when I read it, it was like reading my own thoughts, and I was 25. I was at this spot where I was like, I'm just kind of here because it's comfortable and a paycheck, and, like it's not my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to leave that. And I first went to Alaska and worked as a mountaineering guide. I went and lived at the end of a 66-mile dirt road. This was 2006. So reuse was not like a term people were using, but it was just a way of life. And so, there's a cost to bring everything down the road. There's a cost for it to leave. And so if anything retains value, it's going to stick around. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of like steeped in that. And then I came back to Oakland. I guess I should say I'm from Oakland, California. And I took my first class in metalworking at a nonprofit industrial art school in Oakland. And I wanted to give using my hands a shot, I'd always been creative. My mom's a dance instructor. I knew what it was to be in flow state, and think and live creatively. My mom was raised on a dairy farm in Minnesota, so I'd go back, I'd see my cousins working with their hands. I'm like, man, there's so many other things you can do or other paths in life. And so, you know, I'd taken woodshop in high school, and I was like, I'm comfortable around machines. I've got an idea to create furniture out of car chassis and biodegradable hemp rope. And I have no idea how to do that. So I'm going to go and take a class and start learning. In that class, I very quickly learned that it's ambitious to work in car chassis because you need something bigger than a car to carry it, to travel with it. So I switched gears and I made a couple different end tables. And one of those tables was built out of salvaged structural I-beam. And there was a woman in the class with me, and she was, you know, in her 70s, and she was like, when you finish that, I'll buy it from you. And so it was, you know, exactly the sort of encouragement that I needed at the time to keep going, and really felt like that was a yes from the universe, you know, of like, okay. She was like, this is the first thing you designed in metal. This is awesome. You found what you're supposed to do. Keep going. So that's a little how I got into art. I think we can maybe touch on other stuff later. I want to get to see your chip. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, I should say, like, you know, there's, I think for both of you, you started practicing Buddhism after you started pursuing art. We can cover like, the journey up until the point where you're like, oh, Buddhism, maybe I'm going to bring that into my life. So, so Leo, I'll turn it over to you. What was your journey to discovering you're an artist?
Yes, well, I think for me, I was always, you know, spiritual growing up, and I was born in São Paulo, Brazil, you know, and I was exposed to so many different religions, you know, in Brazil. But the focus was always outside of myself, you know. It was like this, almost this exterior force that would save me, you know. So I kind of grew up with that, you know. And at the same time, I always loved to draw, you know. Since I was a toddler, I just loved to draw cartoons, and I never knew. First, I wanted to be an astronaut, you know. That's what I wanted to be, but then I realized that people make money making cartoons, you know, so I was like, what, you know? And then I was like, man, and then I learned about the, you know, as I think it was more when I was a little older, probably around 17, that I started to kind of really see that as a career, you know, like, and and then I decided to like, that I would love to do animation, you know, a lot of to see my drawings in movement, you know, and so then I at first, you know, I went to industrial design school in Brazil. You know, that's my first bachelor that I got there. But I think at that time we didn't have like animation school, you know, in my time. Now there's so many, you know, but at the time we didn't have it. So that's why I went to industrial design, because it was the closest, you know. And but eventually, like, when I graduated, I thought, you know, I realized how hard it was. The reality in Brazil was really difficult, you know, to get a job in animation. It was just really hard, you know. So I kind of felt then, okay, this is the time for me to leave and you know, like I tried to do this leap of faith, make my dreams a reality. So I kind of left. Yeah, I left Brazil, and I thought it was gonna be. I was very idealistic, you know. I was too young, you know. I was like in my early 20s, and I thought everything was going to work out, you know. I was like, you know, if you fight for your dreams, you know, you're going to realize them. So anyway, long story short, I was able to eventually get to you know, to Cal Arts. It's this great animation school, because I didn't have the caliber yet, you know, to get a job. So that started, the reality started to kick in, you know. How I realized, okay, it's not going to be as easy as I thought it was, you know. And but it was a very expensive school for me, so I didn't really could quite like afford it, you know. And I was a foreigner too, so I didn't have the financial, like, you know, my financial situation wasn't really favorable at all. And but then my parents really like agreed in supporting me. They said, okay, we'll help you, you know. And in order to do that, they loaned their home, you know. So it was like it was a huge kind of risk, not only mine, you know, it was their risk. So I couldn't fail. Failure did not exist in my, you know, in my really vocabulary. So I really worked really hard. You know, I actually built a really strong portfolio. You know, I got a lot of attention, a lot of studios, but what happened is that I had a lot of struggles with my visa, you know, because I'm a foreigner. So, and that was just really hard at the time, you know, in around 2008, you know, that's when I graduated. So everything was kind of spiraling down, you know, so like all that dream come true kind of thing, that kind of optimism was all kind of went downhill, you know. So I kind of like really realized, okay, there's a reality, you know, in this world. It's just some people succeed, others just, you know, they just somehow failure in life, you know, and that's it, you know. And so I was like this victim, you know. I was like, you know, really like victimizing myself. I was very open to religion. I was very religious, you know, like very spiritual, you know, and I always want to try Buddhism. So yeah, that and I, long story short, I started practicing this Buddhism here in the U.S. And what helped me was that idea of like seeing things outside of myself, you know, that's something that it changed, because I realized I'm the captain of my ship, you know, I'm the one that can change anything. And that was like the beginning of how everything shifted in my life, you know. That was kind of like how I was able to make it somehow here in the US, you know, the beginning, you know, the beginning. But anyway, that, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit
I thought it was so funny that, you know, you were pursuing, thinking about like astronaut, and then like, oh, wait, I can make money, you know, with animation. But then the reality is like, well, maybe it's not so easy to make money with animation.
Exactly.
So, you know, that kind of like brings to the, you know, next question that I had for you guys is, you know, both of you decided to start practicing or testing out Buddhism because you were struggling. Like, how do I really live my life as an artist? And I think both were like different, had different kind of obstacles to that. But I'm wondering if each of you can share, you know, the stories of how and why you started practicing Buddhism. And I think maybe we can have Brian share first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Leo, it's so cool to hear. Like, I'm just so happy to be here, because I'm like, oh, it's so awesome to hear. Like the reflected stories, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you know, so I left my safe job, right, and I start on this path, right, and I hadn't gone to art school. I just dove in. I was taking classes at that school, and then I became an instructor. I was teaching welding and welded sculpture. And when I got into it, I just really wanted to learn metal, like top to bottom. So I was making jewelry, I was doing blacksmithing, foundry, I was making large scale interior design stuff, industrial design stuff, you know, furniture, all kinds of things. I was making no money at all. I was like full on, just at that period of time, I actually had very much like bought into the romanticized idea of like a starving artist, and that my struggle was where my good work was going to come from. And so I wasn't interested in how to be successful or make money. But similarly to what Leo said, like, you know, I was believing in this thing that I had heard from society, right? Which is, if you do this thing that you love, that you're called to do, it's going to work out. Like, the money is going to come, you know? I saw a lot of people who are like jerks in society making a lot of money. And I was like actively trying to not be a jerk. You know, I'm like, I'm a good person, or trying to be. I'm doing what I love. It's not working. And it's like, it wasn't like 6 months. I did this for 7 years. Wow. You know, each time I'd make a little bit of money, I'd go back to zero. It was already owed to somebody else. So I was really starting to lose hope in society, in myself. The way I was kind of coping with that was like drinking, and, you know, just like I was living the artist life, and that was awesome. And my art was really the one thing keeping me going. It was the one thing I knew. I was like, when I'm doing this, I feel alive. And that's so clear, but I don't know how to make it work. I was also seeking, I've always been a very spiritual person. I was raised Christian, I was raised Lutheran, and still have a good relationship with the pastor who I got confirmed with. He's awesome. He's a total bodhisattva. So I was seeking in all different ways, I was looking for truth, whether it was different philosophies, whether it was psychedelics, whether it was meditation, whether it was whatever. And the way that I was introduced to this Buddhism, right, was I was actually in the second Native American teepee ceremony that I had sat. And the person next to me was an elder, and they were also a member. And so in the morning I walk out, and she starts to talk to me about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And, I'm someone that at that period of time, even though I was like seeking and spiritual, I was also super skeptical, so skeptical. So I was like, anybody who was coming at me with anything, I was like, I want to hear it. But then if you say you're part of an organization, I'd be like, oh, sweet, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to listen to anything you just said. And now I can leave and continue going about staying in the same place, not growing. But, I'd just been through this experience, and my heart was kind of open, and I was seeing this person in front of me as a person. And I was like, she's very interesting. And what she's talking about is very interesting. And so maybe I'll put my doubting mind over here, And she's like, you should chant. It was like around solstice of 2012. So New Year's of 2013, she was like, you should go check out chanting. So, I said, sure. She had a friend who got in touch with me and confirmed me to go. And I was like, okay. And then she called me again to reconfirm me, which was really smart because I was a young man, and I'm like, New Year's Day, 11 or 1 or whatever time. I was like, I probably won't be able to make it. I'm going to be partying the night before, and she said something that struck me, she was like, there will always be an obstacle to your enlightenment. There will always be something else that comes up or something else you can do because you're trying to do something good for yourself and make a change in the aspects of your life that want to keep you small and keep you from changing in a positive way are going to show up. And so to me, I was like, man, I'm getting asked up by some old lady on the phone I've never even met. I was like, fine, I'll be there, And then I had to look at myself, and I was like, I just told 2 different people 3 times that I would go do this. Am I going to be a man of my word, or am I going to be what I would call a California frosted flake? Which was, I was a total flake at the time, and it was something I wanted to change, and I didn't know how to change. So I was like,
wow.
Before even knowing about cause and effect, I'm like, this is something I can do. You just said you'd be there. And she said, all you have to do if you want to be there is commit with your heart and your mind, and nothing can stop you. And so that was what I did. And that got me to my first meeting. I can share more after that, but I feel like that's
it's a good starting point in showing your internal world. What about you, Leo?
Similar, to Brian too. I'm very skeptical. I was very skeptical even after what happened to me, But really, I think that when I started practicing this Buddhism, like what Brian said, when I put my mind and my heart in it, really, I could see that this works. That my practice actually was making a huge effect in my life. For everything to transform, I was able to get my visa. I was able to get a job at the studio that I really wanted to. That it was my dream. And I was able to be hired for this company. And it's so much that my parents actually, they were the ones that loaned their home, right? They actually saw the change in me, what's happening in my environment, that they chose to join the SGI. So they really, because it was so, I mean, they could have, lost their home. It's like everything that they had, their livelihood. And so the fact that I somehow was able to turn it around, definitely like was an actual proof. It was a way to show them that this, instead of just telling them, they saw it with their own eyes. They saw that there's something very special about this Buddhism. That was my first, and still one of the most powerful like things I saw. It was like, I was so sincere. I was like, what Brian said, I was seeking so much that I really, my entire heart and my mind was at that moment. So I was able to see this huge kind of like change in my life. After like a few years of my practice, I start wanting to, I found out that I wanted to focus on directing, and I decided to leave my job, this studio, so it was a really risky move, because, it was a career that I really like, took a really long time to build. But I really like, after chanting, Anamira Gekyo, and truly reflecting over my life, I was just determined that I should really not let that fear, like of me, of stability, like just feeling comfortable. And I kind of felt, okay, now's the time for my next, thing. So I ended up doing this leap of faith, because in the end, I feel like when you practice Buddhism, right, it's not just to get by, right? We practice to make the impossible possible. Otherwise, we don't need to, right? I think the whole point
we can
of
get
Buddhism
by
is,
otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, we can get by. We don't need anything. But this Buddhism is to really, anything you want to make happen, right? Like possible. I think this is the practice. And anyway, so that was my next stage, which I think was really challenging for me. And but I think I would never have gotten that courage if I didn't have see the results, in my own life, yeah.
Hearing this makes me think of, there's a friend of mine that's also in Brooklyn, and she just moved here and she finished her MFA program, and she really wants to become a full-time artist, and she practices as well. And so she has this really deep sense of this is what I'm going to do, but she's really battling that kind of but how do I actually make it happen? I know that this is what I want, but all of the things in my environment or from society are telling me there's basically no way to make this happen. I think that's probably a very common experience for folks. And, she's also from a different country, so she has that aspect as well. So, and Leo, you shared a little bit about, taking a leap of faith to pursue directing. And I know, Brian, you have an experience too about really solidifying your career. So I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit more about that, based on your own experience, but also any artists listening, how do you go from, I really want to do this, to actually making it real?
Yeah. That's such a good question, because
yes.
I think
the hardest question.
Yeah, it's something that all artists, it had already been 7 years before I started chanting.
Yeah.
Right? And the number of times, even after I started chanting, where it just gets so challenging and confusing, right? Where you're like, I'm called to do this, but I don't see the way forward. I don't see how. I know what I want. There was a guidance that I remember from my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, that, he shared that basically our mission as individuals, right, is to figure out why we are here. What is our purpose? What is it that we can do that will provide the most value to the most people in our lives, right? And it's something we genuinely want. Even if you come to understand what that is, right? If you're fortunate enough to be like, yes, this is my mission in life, this is what I want to do. He says the first step is not always clear. And what he said to do in those situations is to conquer the mountain that is right in front of you. So whatever it is, like for me, in having a big goal, right? That's the thing that has helped me so much, was setting an impossible goal that I didn't know how to achieve. And in 2020, we were encouraged to set an impossible goal towards 2030 and take 10 years to chant and take action to make it a reality. And there was a friend of mine in this Buddhism who said, you know, because you set the goal and you're chanting for it and you're making causes and you're taking action, you can't screw up enough for it not to happen.
That's really reassuring.
I was like, wow. So
wow.
I can't, there's no wrong step. Because part of faith in this practice, right, is that like the goal came out of our life, right? That's why we set the goal. It came from each one of us, our goals. So the challenge also came out of our life, whatever it is we're challenging. And so, yes, we need to keep taking action towards that thing in the best way that we know, but we need to continue winning over whatever's showing up right now, because it's showing up with a deep reason that that's something I need to change in my life. This is what I need to work on, even though it doesn't seem like it. If I knew how to get to my goal, I would just go do it. But the reason it's an impossible goal is from the mindset I'm in right now. And as we grow, our mindset changes and that thing that seems impossible becomes possible. But the only way to grow is by overcoming challenges. So, like, basically, when you're setting a goal that you don't know how to achieve, you're effectively asking the universe, like, send me the exact challenge that I didn't know I needed to grow in the way I didn't know I needed to grow to be able to achieve this thing I don't know how to achieve from where I'm at. But most people don't want to hear, oh, hey, guess what? You should love and appreciate your challenges because they're going to get you there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Leo, do you have anything that you wanted to add on to that?
No, that's you know, amazing. Yeah, and I totally agree. You know, I left my job, that provides some security. You know, nothing in this industry is really secure, you know, but I had some kind of like security in a sense, but then like I feel like leaving that, and I know I had this Buddhism, you know, I had like this community, you know, and so I was feeling very confident, you know. I had everything planned. I didn't just leave my job like to this spur of the moment. I really had everything planned out, and I made sure, okay, if I go to the other side, you know, I'm gonna have like real firm, soil, you know, for me to step on. You know, I didn't really just did so. What happened is that something that I thought would take like 3 months, you know, eventually took like 6 months. You know, eventually became a year, eventually became 2 years, and eventually it became like 10 years, you know. So it became 10 years of this battle of me trying to be a director and not being able to, you know. So it was like just like Brian said, many times I felt confused, you know, even though having this practice. It's okay for us sometimes, right? We're trying to find a path. Sometimes a curveball is thrown on you, right? So I think it's okay for you to feel a little bit like, well, no, I don't know what to do right now. But then because I have the support of this community, it's like a compass, you know, that I kind of, even though I lose my way, I find my way again. So I think because of my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, too, you know, and all his guidance, you know, and I think this community that never gives up on you. So I think for me, you know, after I've seen my actual proof in my first, you know, in the beginning of my practice, this was like, I think, a big task for me, you know, in a sense where I needed to really, it was like a really long period, you know, where I had to kind of consistently continue no matter what, even through moments that are really challenging, you know, that I felt like giving up, you know. But because of my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, and because of this Buddhist community, I was able to continue somehow, in this path, and like always look for how can I create the most value, because I could have the choice to either give up and realize you're not made for this, or like, oh, there's no way you can achieve anything that's impossible, or I can choose the other way, to create value out of it. No, and I think it is not easy, it is, right? So that's why we call practice, right? This Buddhism is a practice. But that was something that was really challenging, like for this 10 years, it was something I kept battling, and I feel it's important is that you make concrete efforts, right? Because Buddhism is not magic, too. Buddhism is not, it's not that you're going to, chant Namyo Renge-kyo, that, right, things are going to fall in your lap, and, like, it's like what Brian was saying, the right path the path that you really need will come to you, But yeah, you still have to make concrete efforts. And second, it's like have confidence in yourself, because for me, like having a consistent Buddhist practice and centering my life on my Buddhahood, has helped me never lose confidence in myself through this like hard moments, that I wasn't sure, So I have challenging ones still, like I mentioned, but I always have this compass and this wonderful Buddhist community that helped me navigate through this challenge.
Wow, I'm just thinking like 10 years is a long time to be like really fighting toward this dream. And like Brian sharing, having a big dream that feels like I have no idea how I'll get there, but that being the thing that like really helps you propel your life forward. And something I've been thinking about really is that having a Buddhist practice helps you really see like you have grit. You can just like keep pushing even in the moments where you don't think you have anything left, or it might on the surface feel like, oh, I'm not moving forward, I'm not pushing forward, but still like, as long as your heart is still working toward that dream, and you're still chanting toward that, your life is definitely moving forward. And I was wondering, Brian, I know you had like a kind of more recent experience related to sculptures and career and stability. So I'd love to hear some of that.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. Effectively, right? I've tried all these different ways to become successful as an artist. So that was one of the things that did shift for me when I started chanting, right? Instead of being like, oh, I'm not interested in success, I was like, success is actually, it's important for me to become successful, because through that, I'll be able to encourage all these other artists, all these other young people, right? Instead of like someone who's just not interested in success is like, it's not super inspiring. It's like, oh, cool. Like I can see that all over the place. So, like tried all these different ways. I own my own business, making custom railings, doors, gates, furniture, one-off stuff. I made commissioned sculpture. I work on projects that go to Burning Man, in these different Burning Man art cars, and have been the lead for this crazy car that goes out there. So, whatever, just tried all these different things. So in 2020, I set my goal, right, which was to create a noticeable positive impact on American culture in our relationship to single-use products and things at the end of their lifespan, hence how we design and our relationship to this Mother Earth. And I had no idea how to do that. And so I set that goal, and then 2020 happened, so it seemed like everything was going backwards. But right around that time, someone was introduced to me who became my business partner. And that thing that I was initially starting with him and that business was a weekend intensive welding workshop, right, for individuals. And so, we couldn't hold any workshops for 2 years. So we were just building the business, right? And that was the kind of like, we're just going to keep meeting every week, let's just keep building the business. We have this time. And we put together a couple of those at my shop. And they were cool, but it's like a lot of work to wrangle like 4 to 6 individuals to come in And so it was not consistent, right? This thing that we really wanted. I think another thing that I will add to the, having that goal is really important. But I had that goal for a couple of years, and then 2023 happened, and I was like, I truly want to respond to my mentor, right? There's someone who has worked every second of their life, to create value, to share this thing that has helped so many people and has helped me in my life so much. I want to respond to that. And I can't just say like, oh, I have this goal and it's going to happen. It's like, I need to rack my brain. I applied something called the impact filter, which is like for any sort of thing, you ask 3 questions. But it's like, what's the best possible outcome of this thing? What happens if I do nothing? And what must be true for that best possible outcome to happen? And so I was like, okay, to make an impact on American culture, Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies need to adopt and espouse this philosophy, because they're the ones creating all this stuff that goes under our feet, and they're the ones driving all the marketing for what we buy. And so I was like, how do I get in with them? And I had an idea to make sculptures out of their material, right? That would live on their campus. And that's great. But I was not some successful sculptor who could walk in the door and be like, hey, check out my awesome idea. You want this. It's going to be great for you. And so, but I had that kind of simultaneously as I was building this other business. And my business partner is in these different corporate boardrooms. And he's like, man, everything you're talking about around sustainability and cause and effect, these are the same words being used in these different boardrooms. And he's like, I think it'd be now is the time for us to really move into corporate team building. Because that was sort of we were going to build the individual one first, and then we'd do the team build. We would build something successful. But I was like, man, I'm down. And, one of my business coaches had said it's arguably the same amount of effort to work with a corporate company as it is to wrangle all these people, but you can 10x what you make in a year. So I was like, all right, well, that sounds better. So I was like, let's go for it, And so what we did was we came up with a blend of these things. We teach corporate team building workshops to a company where we'll go to them, set up a shop, run, 50 people or however many people through. They learn to weld. They weld up a frame. They flip those frames over. Then they attach material from their company that is destined for the landfill into those frames.
Wow.
Then I take all those frames back to my shop and build a large-scale sculpture out of them, and then ship it back and install it in the lobby of the headquarters of this company.
Wow.
And so that just happened this year. We pitched that idea for 2.5 years.
Wow.
So again, needing to have the perseverance during that time where it took 3 years to go from impossible to possible in my mind. Then it took, it's now we just need to do the work. Okay, now we pitched it for 2 years. Then we landed our first contract. And so we just did this out in Nashville.
Wow.
And it was super successful. Everybody who was a part of it was just had a blast, and then they got to be a part of something that lives on at their company for the lifetime of their company, and it's right there. First thing you see when you walk in the lobby, So yeah, that was a huge breakthrough. And this is the start. So now we're back to pitching and sales cycle and all that. So yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So cool. Wow, so cool. And something that was honestly so encouraging to me was when he said it took me 3 years to go from impossible to possible, like in my mind, because sometimes I can feel like, why is it so hard to like pull this like strong determination and really feel like I can do this. So for just where I'm at in my life right now, that was like so great to hear.
Oh, good.
So thank you for sharing.
Of course, yeah.
And you shared a little bit like when you started practicing, one of the things that shifted for you was like, oh, actually, I do want to be successful because I want to be able to like have this impact. And so for you, Leo, I'm wondering, when you started practicing, did you notice like any shifts in yourself as an artist and like the way you thought about your work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I because I as an artist, I tend to be very like selfish, And I think a lot about myself, I'm always talking about me, is my art, and it's not even something that's bad, but I guess as artists, right, that's a big part of what we are. Through Buddhism, I realized that I was almost like we call it like our lesser selves, I was living into this shell, and I had so much more potential, but I was always limiting myself. I was like, I don't have time to practice Buddhism, I have to like study filmmaking, or this and that. And of course, if you think about logically speaking, right, we have just 24 hours a day, but I do feel like once I start really using my practice and my work, I felt like I expanded my life, because we're all interconnected, right? Through Buddhism, we say that everything is interconnected. So at the moment I started to like caring for other people, that I started to see beyond myself, that I started giving time of myself to really support someone, so for like something that creates value. I felt that I was expanding my life, and so that was something that Buddhism helped me a lot to understand how to be more productive in that sense, to do more, to be able, because instead of I was just very limiting, every time I was like, no, there's no way, I cannot do that. I was always like running against the deadline, and I think through Buddhism really, and there's no like, what we discussed first, there's no really logic, because it's a faith-based, it's something, if you start thinking about like the logic side, you just limit yourself, right? So I think Buddhism helped me understand things in that way, and so I think that's what's been helping me a lot. Yeah.
If I can follow up on that,
Yes.
just, like, right, we were pitching that thing for 2.5 years, right? But when we actually landed it, just like Leo is saying, right? What was the change that I made in my life that had that change, right? Because we weren't doing anything different, right? So, and there was, in November, we have our anniversary meeting, and, make a lot of causes towards that, supporting others and young people. And I was really, really pushing hard at that time, like asked myself, like, if my life depended upon this meeting, right, being successful, and, throughout the area where I am I fighting like that? How can I fight like that? When I went in like that with my own life and my own causes, and that sort of determination, just like Leo's saying, it's like that change, it was right at that time. We met with head of HR. 2 weeks later, we have the second call, and boom, So totally agree with you.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like for me too, like it's, it was like this 10-year journey, and I think many times I like reality kicks in, and I was like, man, like I'm making so many calls, I'm really like really going out there and helping others. Why is it that my life is not changing, but one thing I felt it was like incredible is that I think what kept me going, all these years, it was the fact that many times I would feel like at home, and I would have to maybe support another Buddhist friend, and I would have to support my community, my friends, my neighborhood, and but then I to be honest with you, many times I was just not feeling well, myself, at that time I was really struggling to even like going, like visiting another person, because I felt like a hypocrite. It's like, how can I encourage someone, when, and I was like, but then really like our mentor, right, talks about how courage equals compassion, right? And I really like, sometimes you're not feeling well, to do something, but you have to have the courage, and once you do that, the compassion comes, And so that's what I was doing. I would go, even though I was suffering, I would go out of my way and really, encourage another person, even though I would probably was suffering more than that person, but I would go. But then every time I would do that, like something would happen, where I would be inspired by that person sometimes and by what they share with me, or I sometimes would find encouragement from the things I was pulling from my life, And so this was a huge part of why I continued somehow, through this journey. And and then eventually, like, in the year 10, I finally made it happen, So now I was able to make this dream, like a reality, but it didn't come like, it was not given to me like, but I think it really helped me deepen my understanding of my practice, really because I don't think if I had gone through that, if I had gotten it really like quick, I probably would never really gone through all this. It was like I learned so much in this process,
Again, if I can follow on that,
Yes.
like, I've been an artist, right, for 19 and a half years. And financially, I've struggled that whole time, with very small points in between there. And something that, I'll talk to different people and encourage different people who they're like, man, it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Still, I have this goal, still hasn't happened. I'm doing all the stuff. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And, in each of the instances where I have chanted for something and it has taken longer than I expected, right? Or my limited mind is very attached to when something should happen. I have seen that my life needed to expand in order for that to happen. And that's what I have to, remember each time. And when I look at how much growth I've had to do to get to this place, like, I left anything even close to the corporate world 20 years ago. Now I'm talking with CEOs like every other week. And like,
Wow.
The amount I've had to learn in the business realm, is so much, but it's so awesome, right? I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like, now it's fun because I'm like the CEO of my own company, but we do art, and it's awesome. Like, I love learning and talking about it and learning about how to grow and all the things that are my weak points, And so I try and share that with folks, because there was a young man who was like, man, it's been like 6 months, it hasn't happened. I'm like, bro, it took me 19 years.
Yeah.
19 years, man. Like keep pushing.
Keep pushing. You can do it.
There's something coming for you.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Wow. Something I'm thinking about and listening to you guys is it sounds like so much of like the ways that Buddhism informs your lives as artists is like, very much this internal, like, always tapping into the power of your life to really be able to fight for what you want. And also, like, in this expansion of your life, you also can, like, you can see things really differently. You can understand, like, your process to get somewhere differently. And I'm wondering, like, there's, this internal kind of aspect of, like, character, your own character development and building this strength in your internal life. And I'm wondering, and perhaps more of like a intellectual way, if there are aspects of like Buddhist philosophy or like concepts that inform your art at all.
One thing I feel, it's like Ishofuni, right? Like we call it like the oneness of self and environment. And I think that concept is, for me, it's been something very helpful at this moment, because right now, right, I'm directing this project, but of course the challenges keep coming, it's not, that's the thing, not that you hit a point and it's over. No, you have to keep going. It's good. What's the next one? There's always, never going to stop, so right now I have even bigger challenge, because it's like there's a lot of different personalities I have to work with. There's a lot of different opinions, and many times I feel it's easy to separate yourself from others, because you might not get along with someone and you say, oh, that person, I don't like that person, and you pull away from it. But really, like, I think Buddhism helps me to understand that that person is in my life for a reason, and I have to really learn from this situation, learn whatever this person is trying to teach me here, instead of like seeing things from this small lenses, right, where you're saying like, oh no, that person is annoying, or that person is, man, that person is cutthroat, or whatever. It's really trying to see it almost like through like appreciation, like in a sense where how can I create value out of this situation? Because in Buddhism we say to that whatever life state you are in, right? If I bring that to work, that's gonna be the world they're gonna bring at my work. So they're gonna reflect that, they're gonna reflect that kind of tendency that I'm showing, and I think that's helping me a lot. That's why I think it's a continuous practice, right? Because we have to really chant every day. Is like we're able to really for us to go back to what really is important, But I think for me, it's the idea that like whatever's in your environment, is there for a reason, and to be able to bring the enlightened state over every situation, So that you're not dominated by that situation, not become, right? But I think Buddhism has helped me to really not be swayed by it, and it all depends on my life's condition, And for me, in my field, it is always unstable, You never know what really, because a project can be canceled, or whatever it is. If you think like that, in your brain, it's like, man, it's so scary, But I think through Buddhism, I really feel like I have this confidence, that really it all depends on me, It all starts for me, like taking, and so I think it's been a great tool for me, like to not let this the environment that can be very, can oscillate a lot, yeah.
I'm kind of wondering what you think, Brian, but like this aspect of oneness and self and environment to me feels like applied to your work. I don't know if you feel that way, but just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think that to me, there are like two things. And again, like, as an artist, one of the things I've really realized more and more through the years, right? Art is the language of our subconscious. The things that I make, right? I'll just make them because I'm compelled to make them, right? And then afterwards, I look and I go like, oh, wow, that actually, like, our subconscious mind is like smarter than our intellect, right? Like we would say our Buddha nature, right? Like that Buddha wisdom, right? Which I don't know if they're the exact same thing, but they're related, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was compelled to work with found materials from the start because I'm just like, I love living on this planet. I'm so grateful to be alive. And I want it to continue forever in the best possible way and to get better for future generations. And I see all this stuff around us that is just like piling up higher and higher and higher, and nobody seems to be thinking about it or talking about it, more so now. But in 2000, it's just like we're just still in the party. It's just like, just buy it all and throw it away. And it's like, and it's like, this isn't reality. You know what I mean? So absolutely, like, bringing and working with things that others have deemed trash, right? Like, shows that there is still value, right? In these things that you've been told there's no value to that once it's done, just put it over there. But there's so much more. And the idea of like the respect, right, of an interconnectedness of all of our actions, right? And the way that we respect the earth and the environment is the way we respect each other, is the way we respect ourselves. And this practice is based upon the dignity and respect of, we each have the most infinitely respect-worthy aspect within us. And the more we recognize that, the more we see that in others. Yes. So, that I think is a big part, a much deeper part than I even understood 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. And then the other part is this business that I created, right? What we literally are doing. I was talking to these execs today about this because they're like, talk to us about the stuff, and I'm like, there's actually something called many embody, one in mind, which is perfectly represented by this sculpture. And in fact, the CEO of the company, when he unveiled this sculpture, he was like, this piece shows like when we all put our minds together, like what we can achieve, right? And so, there were 50 different people from this company that each made a part of this thing. And so it after the fact, I was like, oh man, that is totally many embody, one in mind. Like, and that, right? Like when we're united, we can achieve anything, which is like, that's what I want for our country as well, right? Is more unity. That's how we win, right? Is the respect and the unity. So it's like, it's so infused, like the philosophy so infused in there. I'm just so grateful for the SGI Buddhist community and the study that we do, because it's like, these are these things that are really so important,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I have one quick question for Leo. So you're a director, but like, what do you direct? Like short films? Do you direct animated films? Do you direct full feature length films? Like,
yes, no, I started like, I directed a short film, like when I was at Disney, like a while back. And that's after, then I left and I thought, then I went to, that my goal was to direct a feature animated film, and so now I'm finally being able, to direct a feature animated film. And
awesome, dude.
It's like, it's always, that's what I learned. It's always, right. It's a constant, it's a constant like advancement. It keeps coming, right? The challenge keep coming, so you never know, right, what will come and go. It's more like your confidence, right? It's like you can't let, like, it's like the we call it like the 8 winds, right? It's like, but it's kind of like you always being centered, never being swayed by, and I think that's what this practice helped me, because it is a very difficult, unstable industry, at least the film industry, I think then no matter what comes is thrown at you, you somehow are able to go with it, right? And create value out of it, So I think that's kind of what brings me peace, in a sense, that's what brings me some sense of stability, That's why I think this practice is so incredible, because it's the only thing that can really give me that sense of like, okay, like tranquility, Yeah.
Thank you, man. Because I was just like, we're all so humble and everything, but I'm like, dude, you're like a director of feature length films. Like, this is like making the impossible possible, dude. Like, I'm just want to honor that and congratulate
thanks,
you.
You too, man. I'm so inspired by everything that I know you did. Some incredible, like the Burning Man. He was just showing me. We were at another conference, and then I was like, man, that's mind blowing. The stuff that Brian does. Man. It's incredible. Yeah.
This is such a fun conversation. I feel so alive listening to you guys, because I think hearing so much just about your personal lives and how bringing out your Buddhahood, how that shines a light on really everything you do is so just really beautiful to hear, honestly, really encouraging. And I wanted to ask just one more question, answer it however you'd like, but I always end episodes asking for a piece of advice. So I'm wondering what advice you guys would give to an artist that's listening to this and they're curious about Buddhism, but they haven't dipped their toes in yet, and they're not totally sure where to start and whether they should start.
So one other thing that I have started doing is coaching, business coaching artists. And so even though they are not necessarily practicing this Buddhism, you know, it's very much one of those things where what I would, if I was someone who is an artist and has this tool of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and I don't know which way to go or what to do, I would really chant to uncover what your deep why is. Why are you an artist? Why are you choosing this path when there are so many other paths out there that are, you know, maybe have a little clearer like trajectory or whatever, you know, like why are you choosing this one? Because it's going to get really challenging. And you're going to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And is this worth doing? And at those times when you have your why, right? Like for myself, right? That's this connection to the environment, but it's also this, you know, us as what we call bodhisattvas of the earth, right? Like how can we bring the most value to the most number of people, right? But like, how do I make that concrete, you know, and get clearer on that? And when you have that, then when you hit those challenging times, you're like, this is why. And this is so much bigger than myself that, yeah, I might be going through some hard things, but that doesn't even matter. It's so important. I'm going to stick with this no matter what.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. You know, if I was an artist right now, you know, I mean, I think, you know, like the reason why I started was because I was really like suffering myself, you know, and I really wanted to somehow see a change in my life. And I was literally against the wall, you know, so I had no choice. Almost like I said, look, if this Buddhism doesn't work for me, I'm done, you know. And but that was the greatest thing that happened to me, you know, because I really feel, I don't think if I was going through that situation, I would give it a try to Buddhism, you know, because I think it was because of how dire was my situation that I really embraced it. So, but all I can say is that, man, this practice really changed my life. I've been practicing for like 16 years and yeah, I promise you I wouldn't be here, you know, giving talking here with you guys or doing, you know, like if it didn't really like affected my life and it really transformed my life. And I think like just what Brian was saying, it is like a really incredible cause that is not only for our own lives, you know, it's for the sake of others, you know. So it's something really profound in a sense where you're not just, it's for like a greater good, you know, it's for a bigger cause, you know. We're trying to really change like the karma of the destiny of humankind, you know, to transform. And so I think it's really profound what we do. It goes beyond just self, you know. Anyway, the advice I would give is that really just, you know, we can tell as much as we want here. We can tell how amazing this practice, but I think you have to try yourself, you know, and really see how you feel. And it's like I keep telling like all this, you know, this key lime pie is so good, you know, whatever, you know, but you got to try it yourself and see how it tastes, you know. And then I think everyone's experienced that differently, you know, but everyone is able to tap in something incredible, you know. But I would say give it a serious try, you know, really like, I promise there's something will happen, you know, some kind of shift, something that absolutely, you know.